Thumbs up on audio, thumbs up on screen. What I thought I would do today would be at least just to give you an appetite of how we see the future. That doesn't make it true, though. It will certainly be our opinion. I do think there's some proof that suggests that this is a probable version of the near-term future. And as I kind of go through this, I'll see if I can spend a good 20 minutes on it. What I would love, obviously, in the end is either you guys call bullshit and you challenge me in the comments, and we can work that in the last kind of 10-15 minutes and see if I can kind of convince you. Or you convince me, and me and my 100 propeller head friends here on 200 Broadway figure something else to do with our time. So the title of the talk is what we call Bring Your Own Agent. And we'll kind of get to that on the very last slide. Let me just spend a little bit of time first on the backdrop. So certainly you, me, my mom, and everybody else have been exposed to virtual assistants in some way, shape, or form, perhaps even over the last good decade and a half. And whether that is Amazon Alexa or Cortana or Google Assistant and so on and so forth, but we've certainly been exposed to it. But I do think there's some sort of interesting distinction, certainly as I see it, between what I would call the conversational UI and the whole idea that a new UI paradigm arrived, and that of the truly intelligent agent, which might just exist within this UI paradigm. And we certainly try to kind of make a distinction between these two here at X.AI. But let's try to kind of focus on the first one first. So sadly, I'm getting older. So I took my CS degree on the command line pretty much. But if you think about it, and it's not so much whether these paradigms are cut right, but we can certainly agree, I would hope, that there was some beginning for where the majority of the input to our compute systems were done on what we might just describe as the command line. Or really, if you think about it, it was something for where we were forced into a setting for where only the most correct syntax could survive. And that pretty much left out most people, unless you had some sort of specialized education or backdrop for you to be able to participate. And then later, somehow the first version of the graphical user interface arrived, and we somehow kind of democratized access to compute to some extent, for where normal people would be allowed to walk up to a desktop and perform some work within a set of applications. I also think that we might be able to agree that the mobile paradigm and the UI that came along with that is probably a distinct UI paradigm in its own right. And then I also think that perhaps, and perhaps the years doesn't really matter, but over the last few years, what have arrived is something we might just choose to kind of baptize the conversational UI. And it's not whether these names are right or whether you agree that it's four distinct UI paradigms. It's more that you can certainly agree with me that there's probably a difference in the UI paradigm. But I think the important part here is that there's certain jobs which I want done for where one UI paradigm over another is probably more optimal. And if I pick one UI paradigm over another, I should make sure that the application or piece of software which I deliver within that paradigm makes the most of it so that the customer is in the least amount of pain. The whole reason that I kind of provide this backdrop first is that if we are indeed in this new setting for where the conversational UI have arrived, that must suggest that some of the existing applications aren't well served within the existing UI paradigms. I'll give you just one example here, right? And I'm sure you can agree with it, that you've seen this over and over again. When a new UI paradigm arrives, there'll be a rush towards it, even when it's not right. Meaning that I don't want Photoshop on my mobile phone. As in, I want to go retouch an image. What I want is my big ass 27-inch monitor at home and mouse and everything, so I can sit and work that. If I want to sit at the airport and work a document, I would actually prefer to do that on my laptop. If I want to go from 200 Broadway to some address in Midtown, I might actually just want the map on my mobile device. So there's only settings for where the application is best served. What I do think happened though is that over the last perhaps even 8 years, short of 9 years, right, since the iPhone arrived, we pushed everything into some sort of app setting for where that must be the solution. I'm not so sure that is right though, as in I can see why we want to push it in that direction, and we use kind of market monikers like mobile first and other kind of gimmicky ideas. And sometimes that rings true. Sometimes I'm not so sure that that really rings true. And I can give you just an example here, and it might just be that I made it up for the occasion, but I'm sure you can imagine another 1,000 examples just like it. So if I walk into the Hilton in San Francisco next week when I travel there, and it's 11 p.m. and I want a Diet Coke, my first thought is not one for where, hey, you know what? Let me go to the App Store. Let me find the Hilton app. Let me download and install it. Let me set up an account on Hilton. Let me log in with my new credentials. Let me find the Hilton store within the app. Let me add Diet Coke to the basket. Let me check out. Let me find my credit card. And somehow along the way, hope I get a Diet Coke. But I actually think I kind of half died before I got my Diet Coke here. And that just doesn't seem like the right interface to go ask for a Diet Coke. Which is why, if you're in that hotel room next to me, what you would do, or what I think pretty much anybody would do, is pick up the phone, click the one button that says room service, scream Diet Coke into the telephone, hang up, and somehow 10 minutes later, that Diet Coke arrives. Perhaps there's a different UI paradigm that should be deployed here, which we call the conversational UI, right? For where, wouldn't it be nice if there was a big ass number on the door and I could just kind of text the downstairs lobby and say, hey guys, can you bring up a Diet Coke, please? Perhaps even better, there's an Alexa or some similar device in the room and I can just scream Diet Coke. And somehow by magic, it arrives a little bit later. That certainly seems like a much better setting for whatever pain I might be in at that moment, and the app just isn't a solution. Now, there's a long lead up to kind of create a distinction between the UI and the agent. Whoever receives this message, which could be some human downstairs in the lobby, who will just kind of get my text or get my voice that was translated to text or just get the audio, it doesn't even matter. But there'll be some agent downstairs who receives it and figures out, what do I do with this request? One, do I understand it? Two, can I somehow kind of reason with what he's asked for? And three, can I take action on it? That is where I think the intelligent agent arrives, or what we might just call AI, that there's some machinery here for where, hey, perhaps I don't need to hire a human to sit here at 3 a.m. on a Saturday night to go interpret that specific request. And that's the distinction between these two, that there's just a new UI that has arrived, and somehow some people, perhaps to a large degree, the press, conflated that with the agent itself, where they're really two different things. The way I certainly like to think about it, and certainly the way we like to engineer things around the office, is that we want to create this kind of positive disconnect between communication channel and agent, so that whatever agent you have, whatever intelligence that you go engineer, that should really be something for where that can be transferred from one communication channel to the next. So one morning I can email Amy at X.AI, the next I can Slack her on some @handle inside Slack, or text her on some number on my phone, or whatever that might be. So two distinct items. Now, I don't really care too much about the conversational UI. What I think though is that that is a catalyst for us to go inject these intelligent agents into the world in the year 2017. Now, how do I think this is going to play out? I find it very hard to convince myself that some sort of single agent setting will be the future, some oracle for where Google Assistant will end up having the ability to answer any question which I have, do any job which I can imagine. It's easy to say. I'm not so sure that even if they had infinite resources, they wouldn't have infinite imagination. As in, what apps do you even go if we're in an app setting? Engineer for a Danish American dude like me with a wife and 2 teenage daughters in downtown Manhattan. As in, they wouldn't even know what to put in place. Which is why we have an app store today, so that my phone is different to yours. I find it much more likely that we're going to see a very similar setting in this new conversational UI and intelligent agent setting, for where we will have a set of, let's call them horizontal AIs or enabler AIs, if you will, and they will somehow become your initial first friend. And what you will do is that you'll go employ a set of highly specialized vertical AIs that can do one job, but do that one job really well. And that one job might just be really specific to you, your industry, your vertical, your social circle, whatever that might be. But it's something for where you can go employ that to do that one particular job that removes a pain which you have. And then there'll be some sort of relationship between these horizontal AIs and these vertical AIs. And it might look like, in a kind of clunky interpretation, something for where you'll say, hey Siri, could you get Amy to set a meeting between Dennis and I on the first week of June when I'm in Manhattan? And it's now Siri's job to understand that this is a skill which I don't have. We do have somebody on payroll who can go work this. Her name is Amy. I will package the request, send that out to this agent. This agent will take in the request, go work it for the next 2 minutes, hour, 2 days, whatever it might take. And upon completion, go back and say, hey Siri, remember that job you gave me on Saturday morning? I've done that for you. You can go back to your boss and say so. And that, I think, is something for where the next, if we kind of replicate the 8 years it took to go from nothing to 2.5 million some odd apps in the App Store, there'll be a similar setting here for where we'll go from nothing to tens of thousands of intelligent agents that are highly specialized. Now, and again, remember, when I say agent, I'm thinking of entities for where there's no immediate answer per se, not kind of question answer bots. What's the temperature in Copenhagen? What's the currency in Germany? Or kind of request action settings. Set my alarm for tomorrow morning, but agents that can take in an objective, work that job over multiple turns, and come back with a solution, a typical solution where there's multiple true outcomes, right? For where if you want to meet up with me, there's no single true outcome. You and me meeting up some Wednesday at 10 is equally true to you and me meeting up some Thursday afternoon at 3, if that lies within both our preferences. Now, the kind of example, because this is what you pay for when I have to get up on a Saturday morning and give a short comment, is one type of verticalized AI, and I'm obviously highly biased here, so you can go pick up a cup of coffee now when I give you a short story on what we've done to kind of implement this particular agent. But it's certainly one for where you can see here, we are in the meeting scheduling space, and we see that there's a pain in those types of incoming requests. If you look on the left-hand side of my screen here, where an email will say something that rhymes with that. Hey Michael, good to talk to you yesterday. Do you have time to meet up later today, tomorrow, or perhaps early next week? I have free most days after 1. Look at that message. That's not even an email. That's a fucking riddle. As in, somehow you want me to solve your little riddle here so we can meet up. The nice thing though is if you can somehow take this job and hand it over to somebody else for where you do not have to participate in it. And for us, the kind of communication channel that we support right now is email, and the handover then on the email protocol is CCing in an email and forwarding that message and applying your instructions. And for us, that is something that rhymes with, hey John, I'll be happy to meet up. I've CC'd in my assistant Amy and she can help get something on my calendar. And it's now Amy's job to do really 3 things quite well. 1, fully understand the request, as in what job was I just asked to do. Understand that in full, by the way, not a little bit, but in full. 2, have some reasoning or capability to reason with, now when I know this, what do I do? And sometimes it's very simple. You email Amy and say you're running 5 minutes late. Reaction might be nothing. It might be to inform me and so on and so forth. And then lastly, to have some ability to communicate back to the constituents, meaning of the other participants, most of them will be human in this loop. Now, in this setting here, I think most agents will kind of have these kind of 3 challenges, right? Some sort of natural language understanding challenge, some sort of reasoning challenge, and some sort of kind of natural language generation challenge. And that's certainly the space we're in. But we're also in a space where we accept the fact that we won't be the single agent you go employ. We'll just be one of those highly specialized agents where this we solved. And then we'll get married to Alexa, Siri, Cortana, but we certainly want to work with them. That leads us kind of towards really my point, which is if that is one version of the future, and that plays out, and 1 million of those apps in the App Store aren't really supposed to be there because you are better served in some conversational UI, and within that UI, the agent could really flourish, then I think there might be some new setting in the future that could rhyme with something that we've seen in the past, right? So certainly some of us here will have some memory of that moment for where we all talked about the idea of bringing your own device to work. And we shouldn't forget that there was a moment in time where if you brought this little baby to work and you started to retrieve the company email, you would be called in for a chat as in, are you out of your mind? As in, did you take PricewaterhouseCoopers emails onto your personal device? This is your first warning. 2 warnings and you're out. Today, we barely talk about it. As in, I just assume that any one of our guys will have company email, Slack, Google Drive, GitHub, Clubhouse, what have you, on all of their personal devices. And right now that our source code is being loaded onto some laptop somewhere in Manhattan that I'm not aware of. But that became normal. I think this idea of bringing your own agent will be equally normal. Not today though, but soon enough. So in this setting here for where I've employed Amy to manage my calendar, I can give you a count here. I had Amy set up 987 meetings for me in the last year alone. And I do about 1,000 meetings a year. And she's done that every year for 3 years straight. That means I have some sort of relationship with this agent for where both I've set it up and applied all my preferences, tuned those preferences over the years. She'd learned my little quirks so that she works so well for me that if I were to change jobs, I would want to bring Amy with me. And when I start to bring Amy with me, then comes the question, is that something for where the employer should be aware? And if he is aware, what should his reaction be? The reaction could be that you can't bring any of your agents here, but I think it will be the opposite. So certainly today, it feels like you almost hired somewhat of a handicapped employee if they don't have any mobile devices in. That's odd. kind of almost eccentric. I think this might be equally odd and kind of eccentric if you sit in some sort of interview at some point and I ask you, so tell me, how do you set up your meetings? And you say, I do that myself. As in, you do all the email ping pong back and forth, but I hired you to be my senior account manager. I'd much rather you kind of spend time talking to our customers. No, but I like sitting up at 11 p.m. doing email ping pong, trying to figure out who to talk to tomorrow. Oh, okay. How do you manage all of your customers, which will be kind of handed to you? We use Salesforce here. No, I like to kind of write it up on a piece of paper and then I look at that. What? That seems odd. What about your receipts? Oh, I keep them in a Dwayne Reed bag and then I give them to finance at the end of the month. We use some other application for that. As in, all of those could kind of seem really eccentric very quickly. And if that is the case, perhaps when I interview people, I interview not just the people who sit across me, but I interview them based on who they are, but also the agents which they bring with them. As in, you tell me, who do you have on your payroll? Because when I hire you, I expect you to bring some sort of scheduling agent, some sort of travel agent, some sort of hotel agent, some sort of receipts agent, or I would love if you could use one of our agents, or perhaps that doesn't even matter. Or certainly I want your agent to be able to speak to our agents here. And then it is not just you, but it's your ability to both find and train and maintain these agents over time, which I will kind of choose to kind of decide whether I hire you or not. And that, personally, I find super exciting. That is certainly, I think, a future for where, as I see it, it's almost kind of inevitable. But then again, I could be crazy. And that is certainly fair to kind of suggest. And we did our exact 20 minutes. So let's see if you either agree or you call bullshit. So let me just go off screen share. For Mike, suggesting here that there could be a high hurdle to go create really truly useful agents. And only kind of major firms, the typical folks and actors, right, like Google and Facebook, will be able to do so. I'm not so sure I believe in that. I can certainly see that the traditional actors will be likely to kind of run these enabler AIs because they own and operate either the OS or the actual kind of handsets, and that becomes kind of the default, and it becomes very hard to not use Siri if you've chosen to have an iPhone. However, I do think, and very much agree with you, that the complexity in building a truly useful or intelligent agent today is hard. To give you some perspective here, we are 160 people, all in all, at Expert AI, and we spent now 3 years plus doing core R&D, and we just launched the kind of premium version of our product. And I'm certainly not suggesting that we are perfect just yet. So there's been a large amount of effort going into this. I do think that that will compress over time, and that it will become simpler to kind of bring some of these agents to market. That is, I cannot not see that happen. Just like those massive complexity. Remember, it will be, kind of millions and millions of dollars even to put up the most rudimentary website back in the beginning 90s. It was super expensive to bring the first app to market. But now things have become kind of normalized to the extent for where you and I could do any one of those things ourselves on the weekend. So I see where you're coming from. I might think it rings true in 2017, but I think it will be much more cost effective as we move forward. Now, here's another one. What integrations are Amy and Andrew able to use today? So that's a good question. So we spent almost all our energy and all the monies that we have in bank, which is not much, on the core utility. As in, if the agent cannot do that core utility, as in I ask Amy and Andrew to set something up between Axel and I come first week of July on 200 Broadway. If you cannot do that thing, then you can't do anything for me. But there's really 3 dimensions upon which we want to expand our agent. And the first one is expand into other languages. So we need the agent to speak German, Spanish, some version of Chinese, whatever that might be. Not just to attack new markets, but really to become a superhuman assistant for where you spot that one of the guests in this meeting is Japanese, and I should be kind, not only to speak to his local time zone, but speak in his native tongue. 2, exist in other communication channels. As we talked about, carry this over to Facebook Messenger, Slack, text messages, and so on and so forth. And then lastly, and this is where perhaps the integration point arrives, make sure that we expand on the event itself, meaning that if we're meeting up in July, if we're meeting up for lunch, perhaps Amy actually did book the table at Hara Sushi. If it's in Midtown and I always take an Uber, just make sure the Uber arrives here. No need for me to kind of sit and fiddle with that. If we're doing a demo over WebEx, just log into my WebEx and set up the URL and figure out you're in Singapore, pull out that number and include that into the invite. If you and I haven't met before, make sure there's a small kind of mini bio, help, even just my LinkedIn link so you can click it. But everything that kind of revolve around the event itself, that's where you'll see us expand. But we haven't really worked that to date. It's been all core utility. Yes, here's a good one. Remember the story of the guy who outsourced his own programming job? And if you guys haven't read it, you should actually go search that. That is a hilarious story, not because some guy went crazy, but because it kind of makes sense. Do you know, it's one of those things where we laugh, but only because it's kind of the right way to think about things. So I think if you look at that guy, that is perhaps the most extreme test of what I just suggested. And what he did was actually hire a set of intelligent agents in the most extreme sense that those agents were human. They did a job that he was supposed to do, but much more cost effective. So I don't necessarily think that he was crazy. I think at that moment in time, when was this? Perhaps a couple of years or more back, and that certainly wasn't acceptable at that point in time. And as soon as you inject humans into it, then it seems even more unacceptable. But I actually think he was on the right path. I'm not so sure anybody could see that at that moment in time, but it's a wonderful story. Data security is probably an issue here. I agree. And I think really with any piece of software, or really probably at that moment for where we all moved to the cloud in some capacity, as in all our documents, all our source code, help, all our kind of servers, everything is kind of in the cloud, and I rely on some agreement with another firm trying to keep my data secure, and whatever I put in place, I kind of propel that forward into agreements with my customers. I don't think this changed much though. I think though that the type of contracts we'll have in place for where software today mostly comes under some sort of terms of service, where I think the agent relationship will rhyme much more with the employer-employee type relationship, for where today we all have a set of contracts put in place with our employers, right? For where we signed PIIAs and certain items are certainly confidential, we know who owns what, and so on and so forth. I think those type of agreements, by extension, will kind of be pushed into these agents. So I don't think it's really any different than you hiring some admin staff tomorrow where you have them sign a set of documents and you hope that you've hired some good people who don't gossip, who keep the information secure, who don't forward it and do all sorts of things with it. The other item, which I also think is perhaps kind of a mental change in this new environment, is that many of these agents will be pushed to market on the utility itself. And I think right now there might have been a moment, perhaps even a full decade if you look at it, for where you were never really sure, so what was the business model here? Because I'm getting something for free, and if I'm getting it for free, that means value must be extracted elsewhere. Most of the time, that is on your data. But I think these new agents will be sold on the utility itself. And we are in the same space where we are very upfront and honest about the fact that that email, which you just CC'd me in on, is yours and you own it. You expose it to me so I can do a job for you. Just like if you hire somebody, you expose them to company information, but they don't own it, but they need to see it to be able to do their job. And we have a set of kind of agreements in place where that is the exact same case. But it's interesting, and I'm certainly not suggesting that we solved it. It's going to be interesting to kind of see how this works out as we kind of move forward. What platforms currently support Bring Your Own Agent? I think Bring Your Own Agent is perhaps more of a philosophy and not something that is platform dependent. What I do think, though, is that the agents themselves arrive in these new conversational UIs. So anything from WeChat to Facebook Messenger to Slack to text messages to email to voice and Alexa and so on and so forth. And that is where they live. As in, if you look at Amy and Andrew at X.AI, there is no app, there's no interface, there's no website. They only exist in dialogue, which again, really, if you think about the employer-employee relationship, there is no app for Denny's, right? You can talk to me and I'll give you some sort of response, but there is no app for me. As in, you can't walk up to anybody at your firm and say, hey, show me your features. Then they're going to punch you in the bloody face. But that, I think, is kind of platform independent. I do think, though, that there's platforms who seek to be winners in the race for where most of the B2B agents will arrive. So I think Slack is very eager to be kind of that platform or OS, really. I think that the guys at Amazon, even though it looks very consumer-like, have good initiatives in place, certainly the ones they present to us on how they want to go attack the enterprise. Are there any other use cases X.AI would attempt at? You know what? Not really. I am a huge fan of extreme focus, as in it's so easy to end up being kind of half-assed at 7 things, and it's so hard to end up being world-class at just one thing. We're trying to at least be world-class at one thing. So let me give you just some anal stats here, because this is the industry that I'm in. There's a little bit above 10 billion formal meetings being set up in the US every year by short of 90 million US knowledge workers. If you pick up your phone right now and look at those 17 events you have for next week, which is part of that pool of 10 billion, I just want to be the guy who put it there. That's not going to be easy, but that is what we are chasing. Not once we solve this, we want to move into another vertical, want to solve that, want to do something else. We just want to really drill deep. And I think the reason that we're so eager to do that is that there's some really true, honest network effects in what we do here. Kind of almost like self-driving cars, right? Where they are super hard over the next 20 years because we're going to be in this mixed mode where humans and machines kind of drive together and everything is really a prediction. We're in the same space right now where we're in mixed mode for where humans and machines are talking about when they can meet up. That is hard. So we have one of those companies where it will never be harder than this. And as we move forward and we see more and more Amy's kind of hit each other, then it becomes simpler as we have a decreasing complexity. Just like 20 years from now, for where every car is machine driven, I'm making a whole lot less predictions and I'm asking a whole lot more questions to the car over there. Are you going to stop? Because I don't need to make a prediction based on whether you de-accelerate, the signs I can read, and so on and so forth. I can just ask you. So we're going to be in the same setting. So really, for us, drill deep, be good at this. How do you see agents communicate with each other? This is a good question. And this is perhaps where you'll suggest that I'm completely crazy, but today, most software applications will communicate with each other through some sort of traditional API, right? We've done that for decades, right? Certainly, last 30 years since I started on CS. And the funny thing about that relationship is that you put the burden on the one who have the request. As in, if I want some sort of relationship, data relationship with Expedia, say for my application, the burden is on me to figure out the API which they put in place and go request the information. And when an error is again on me to solve that error. That seems kind of odd, doesn't it? As in, I want to get information from you. As in, perhaps I want to buy some of your stuff and you put the burden on me? So shouldn't it be one flipped? As in, no, the burden should be on Expedia and there should be no burden on me. And if no burden on me, I actually think that almost all communication between both agents and applications in general will move to natural language. Something for where I should really be allowed to ask Expedia, hey, you know what? What is the cost for a trip to Miami this weekend for my wife and my 2 teenage daughters? And I need to be back come Monday, 10 a.m. for a meeting. That's not super structured at all. But it seems kind of clear, since most of you understood the request, that Expedia now needs to kind of figure out how to handle that. So that is how I think most of these agents are going to communicate with each other in natural language. And the reason I think that's going to turn out to be true in particular is that I think for the foreseeable future, we'll be in mixed mode where some of these agents will be humans and we wouldn't even know who are human. All I know is that I have a request for the guy at the downstairs lobby. I don't know whether that's a machine or whether that's a human. You guys figure it out. So that is certainly the part for where I can be overly naive and I'll accept that, but I can't see any other way for us to get to the other side. And this seems so back-asswards to me that we flipped the burden early on because of technical challenges. And I think there might just be this moment in time where we can flip that. But, and this is a fair request, but aren't you making it harder by making people type out the request? That kind of brings me, and I think that is both true and honest. And sometimes I actually do agree, but it kind of brings me back to my original point, which is that I think you need to find the perfect UI for the particular pain your customer might be in. And what I want, if I walk from 200 Broadway to the meatpacking districts, finding the Apple shop, I don't want little text messages. What I want is a big visual display of a map with a dot on it so I can see where I'm at and a little line for where I'm supposed to go. That I think is a much better interface, and for that, don't type out anything. However, I do think the input though is much better if I just voiced it or typed it. As in, I don't want to find from lists or what have you. So I think there's certainly a whole plethora of apps, and in my little kind of haphazardly, half of those 2 million apps in the app stores should probably stay put in the app store. But I do think the other half, they are better served if you move them over, as in my little kind of diagram example. And some of them we need to figure out, no, we shouldn't have moved them. And you'll see many of these right now as we kind of fumble a little bit, right? Where they'll be moved into some sort of bot setting in Facebook Messenger, and you will think, that doesn't belong here. As in, I'd much rather order those flowers for my mom in a web interface. You know what? You might be right. And then it should stay there. So that, I think, there'll be plenty of noise. And I think it arrived already, but we'll solve that. Just like I think we've solved what belongs on your desktop, what belongs on your mobile phone, and then have a little bit of an overlap. But we certainly have a good idea of what belongs where. What about voice recognition of languages? So when I speak of natural language, that includes my funny Danish English accent here. And somehow the agent needs to be able to kind of participate in that. I think, and again, it's not that I want to go all Star Trek on you here, that the individual languages that we choose to use will kind of not be the hard part. As in, you might just choose to speak in American English. I might just choose to speak in Danish. Somebody might just choose to speak in Korean. And I think that is not going to be the hurdle. if you certainly look at kind of voice to text quality today, that is at such a high quality for so many languages that I think that part probably doesn't matter. You do what you do best. And this is where these agents very quickly will turn superhuman. You couldn't even hire an assistant and say, hey, my requirement for this particular job is that you speak 17 languages fluently. And if she did, you'll probably be working for her. But on that end, I think that is going to be not a solved challenge, but not really what we're going to be facing as a major challenge as we move forward. Emoji could replace natural language. I think replace might be too grand, but I certainly think that, and we see this already, and we train on it already, that emojis are arriving, and you are actually encoding your message with real meaning because of these emojis. So say somehow we make a new sale, it's our biggest customer to date, and I send out an email to everybody, let's go celebrate on McDonald's, and I have a kind of wink emoji. Perhaps I'm trying to say that we're not celebrating at McDonald's, and somehow my agent needs to understand that that was not a request to go book a table for 100 people at McDonald's. So I certainly think you're right that they will arrive, they have real meaning. And again, just the input here, sometimes interactive cards instead of typing might actually be a good way of communicating. Couldn't agree more. Sometimes I think what I don't want is to type this out in full. If I could just click it, if you're good at it, do that. So it's not, remember, I'm not married to the UI and the way it's being implemented itself. No, I'm married to the agent. I think the agent needs to exist within whatever UI paradigm that we end up with. So I spend all my time on the agent. And sometimes the input to the agent could be one of those interactive cards as you suggest. So certainly not in disagreement there. I do think though sometimes people do interactive cards not to help the customer, but because the kind of NLP challenge was too grand. So since I can't do it, you got to help me out here. So I just want to caution on the kind of current implementation of many of these cards as being the best choice for the customer. I think that was just the only thing we could get to work today. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. In the Expedia example, could I just have picked from a drop-down? Sure, I could. But again, in my Hilton example, it's not that I can't download the app and set it up and have an account and log in and add that I can. And it's not that I can't figure out how to use the web interface on Expedia, which isn't bad, by the way, super optimized, and it'll take me 20 some odd clicks to get a good set of choices for me and my family to go to Miami. It's just that I don't want to. All I wanted was just to kind of shout out a request, look away, and see some result come back and say, oh, $800, that's not too shabby. You know what, Expedia, let's do it. I think that is certainly what I would want for my travel agent. We shouldn't forget here, by the way, that the travel agent used to exist, and I would go a place, I would speak to him, and he would do just that for me. That got optimized away. And now somehow the Expedias of the world persuaded you and I to become our own travel agents. So I'm not necessarily buying that is the best interface for that particular pain. Me saying that as a single customer. Let's do another 4 minutes. Let me scroll up here. When do you see agents being employed in the public sector? Train stations, courts, and so on and so forth. I'm not sure there is necessarily, again, any difference here. The public sector tends to be slightly delayed if you look at it compared to the private sector. And I think it's likely, again, that you will see something similar here. I don't think that they will be excluded, though. And again, I don't see any evidence that they will take on this software paradigm faster than the private sector. So I think it will play out as we've seen it play out many times before. I can see an extreme focus from the way you talk about the problem. Yes, we've thought about nothing else than scheduling meetings for 4 years straight in a basement. Let's scroll up, see if we can pick one more. You must be Danish. So talking of travel, does the regional dialects of, say, Jutlandic, Zealand, or Bornholm matter from a machine learning point of view? I do think that there's just a set of challenges on the machine learning end still, for where we kind of need data sets so large that sometimes we end up with something too sparse to really solve it. So again, which is no secret, we train across multiple users on language. As in, even if you think about my 1,000 meetings a year, or the 987 meetings that are done in the last 365 days, that's not a lot of data points, especially if you start to kind of segment that. So how many of those did I actually reschedule? Or how many of those did I go in and change the location? Say 50? That means you get 50 change location data points from me in a year. That is so sparse that you can't really do much training on it. So I do think that there's certainly some challenges for where we do need to train across multiple customers, and any kind of individual training is probably something which needs to end up being extracted into a set of preferences that you can use in your reasoning instead. So that is, I think, just industry-wide a challenge that we all have, where we need way more data than any 4-year-old needs to kind of figure out a problem. But that's kind of where we're at, and we're really no different. And if you look at all of the money that we spent over the last good 3 years, that's been put into building these annotation consoles, writing up annotation guidelines, in the most anal way, go in and annotate and label data day in and day out. Hundreds of thousands of individual meetings and millions of emails have been labeled, so we can come up with some reasonably high accuracy predictions here. But that is something for where, if you put it on just me, that is just too sparse. You are welcome. Last question here. How does the UX with AI agents change, or does it, when the consumer is aware that it's an AI versus not aware? And how important is it to have conversational user experiences that reflect human traits, including flaws like mistakes and so on and so forth, showing empathy? This is a good question, and this is something for where there'll be no kind of short answer to it. So we think about this all the time. I'll just give you just at least one idea to how we think about it. So we have people on staff, we call them AI interaction designers, whose job it is to do nothing but this. That's actually, funny enough, a story in the New York Times yesterday with Diane Kim, who leads our AI interaction group. There's also a set of commentary from other companies on how they actually design these agents. And I'll just latch on to one of these kind of design challenges, not all of the ones that you ask. They're all really good questions, right? I would love to kind of spend the next 2 hours just talking about exactly how we've been working those challenges. But you talked about empathy. So here's the thing. First of all, I want to get that out of the way. We don't think this is a game of me being able to fool you into believing that this is a human. I think that is the wrong game to play. I think this is a game of me telling you up front, this is a machine, but do the job so well that come the end of it, you want to say thank you. That is the game I want to play. Not I have fooled you, but a game of I've done the job so well that you cannot not write thank you very much, Amy. And that, by the way, we see all the time. We've even had to kind of create models where we can kind of predict gratitude, just because many times you see temporal data in gratitude, right? Thank you very much, Amy. You have a great weekend. And then I have to kind of deal with that. But that's the kind of game we play. But coming back to empathy, I'll give you one example here, and then we'll close up with that. Is you set up a meeting with me. We're meeting up next Tuesday. I figured out that I'm just super busy. I push it an hour to a little bit later. I figure out I'm not finished yet. I push it to later in the afternoon. I really can't make it. I push it to the next day. And at some point, I go from being kind of a nice guy to being kind of an asshole rather quickly here. But that doesn't change the fact that Amy still works for me. She's my agent. You do what I tell you to do. But she needs to understand that this is actually quite unfortunate. So what we've done here is that we've tried to implement some type of both understanding of when things are unfortunate and to inject some level of empathy. And even though that you know this is a machine and the empathy is really, per any definition, certainly fake from the machine end, it still works. And you would say, Dennis, but what does that mean? Works, don't kid it here. No, as in we can look at those meetings and we can see, so what is the probability of us being able to keep the meeting intact versus when we apply no empathy versus when we do apply some empathy. And by applying some empathy, just as in Amy saying, very subtle, I'm so sorry, but we have to kind of reschedule this. That little notion of her being aware of the fact that this is turning kind of shitty, but just her being aware and not just looping like this brute machine, that increased the willingness of you wanting to keep the meeting. And we can call that what we want, but there's some sort of machine empathy here where it, again, on some level connects with the human on the other side, and he's now more willing to say, you know what, fair enough, Dennis might just be busy. So you're right, those are really interesting challenges. And there's actually a whole field here on a new type of UX that we don't have any books or education or backdrop for. We're trying to, I wouldn't say make it up as we go along. That doesn't sound right when I say it out loud. But we're certainly trying to really invest real time and energy, employ real people with real skills that touch upon this so that we can create some expertise internally. And I actually think that there'll be a ton of people kind of lining up for these new types of jobs kind of as we do this in the future. So that was that. That was my closing. I hope I added a little bit of value on a Saturday morning where I walked up to the firm. Thank you very much, guys. Cheers.